Boss Bogo. In this special battle report, I discovered a kill team that, until just a few days ago, had never been seen on board a Space Hulk. Or anywhere else for that matter. I'm talking about the fearsome beastmen known as the Fellgor Ravagers. From what I've heard, these Ravagers are very strong, but they'll be taking on an Ultramarine Intercession squad, so this battle should definitely put them to the test. If you benefit from this battle report, please support my mission by liking and subscribing. Now, on to the battle. This section of the Gallowdark is defended by an Ultramarine Intercession squad. There's an Intercessor Sergeant with a tilting shield, an Intercessor Gunner with a Vengeance-class scope, Reclusium-blessed bolts, and a combat knife, an Assault Intercessor Grenadier, and 3 regular Assault Intercessors. And their chapter tactics are duelist and methodical. And attacking this section is a team of Fellgor Ravager Beastmen. While they may not look like Beastmen, they certainly are, as evidenced by the identification tags attached to each one of them. There's an Ironhorn, a Death Knell, a Fluxspray, a Gnarlscar, a Gorehorn, a Herdgoad, a Mangler, a Shaman, a Toxhorn, and a Vandal. And each of them has war paint. Both sides set up barricades. And then both sides deploy operatives along their respective drop zones. In the scouting phase, both teams choose to perform recon. And each team dashes an operative forward. The Ravagers employ reckless determination, providing them some additional protection against shooting attacks. And in response, the Ultramarines employ their tactical doctrine. The Ironhorn then uses his Call the Attack ability, affording the Mangler and the Shaman free dashes forward. And neither side reveals any tac ops. The Mangler then opens the hatch, enters the chamber, and moves behind cover. An Assault Intercessor then moves forward, secures an objective, and goes on guard. The Gnarlscar and moves and grants +1 APL to the Death Knell. The Marine Gunner then moves to a hatch, opens it, and dashes behind cover inside a chamber. The Ravager Vandal then moves up and secures an objective. An Assault Intercessor opens a hatch, moves behind cover, and secures an objective. The Gorehorn moves and opens a hatch. The Grenadier then moves and dashes behind cover and goes on guard. The Death Knell then opens a hatch, moves into a chamber, and with the extra AP, he secures an objective. An assault intercessor then opens a hatch, moves into a chamber, and secures an objective. The Ironhorn moves and dashes near a hatch. The Intercessor Sergeant then dashes forward, moves to a hatch, opens the hatch, and moves slightly backward. The Flux Spray then opens a hatch and moves behind cover outside the Grenadier's guard range. The Toxhorn then moves outside the Grenadier's guard range and lobs his Pox Bomb, causing the Grenadier to lose 1 APL and suffer 3 mortal wounds. The Herd Goat then moves into a chamber and secures another objective. The Shaman then moves and curses an Intercessor's ranged weapons. At the end of the first turning point, both teams score 3 victory points for having secured 3 objectives. In the second turning point, the Ultramarines claim the initiative. The Ultramarines then employ their assault doctrine, and the Ravagers employ both violent temperament and ambush. The Ironhorn then uses his Call the Attack ability, granting a free sprint to the Vandal. The Ultramarines declare their intent to eliminate guards and nominate the Death Knell as their target. In response, the Ravagers also declare their intent to eliminate guards and nominate the Assault Marine on Objective 5 as their target. Both sides then declare their intent to rout the enemy, and the Ultramarines declare their intent to use shock and awe. The Ultramarine gunner moves and fires a frag grenade at the Ravager Mangler. But because of the protection provided by the Death Knell, the grenade only causes 4 wounds to the Mangler, 4 wounds to the Death Knell, and no wounds to the Shaman. The gunner then uses Bolter Discipline to fire Reclusium-blessed bolts at the Mangler, but the gunner's aim is off, and the Mangler suffers no damage. The Ravager Shaman then casts Rejuvenation on the Death Knell, healing him back up to full. He then shoots at the Ultramarine gunner, but causes no damage. The nearby Assault Intercessor then charges the Death Knell, careful to stay out of the Mangler's engagement range. Using his duelist ability, the Ultramarine expertly parries the Death Knell's counterattack, but is then struck by a second attack for 4 wounds. The Ultramarine then drives his chainsword through the Death Knell, causing massive damage. But because of the Ravager's Frenzy ability, instead of becoming incapacitated, the Death Knell simply becomes frenzied. Determined to finish off the Death Knell, the Ultramarine uses his Shock Assault ability to fight a second time. But because he is unable to score a critical hit, the Death Knell strikes the Marine again, before the Marine finally puts in the killing blow. Scoring points for both eliminate guards and rout. The Herd Goat then grants +1 APL to the Toxhorn, then moves forward to take cover. An Assault Intercessor then charges the Flux Spray, but fighting defensively, the Flux Spray deflects the Marine's attacks and strikes back for 8 wounds. Undeterred, the Ultramarine uses Shock Assault to fight a second time. The combatants parry each other's blows, but then the Ultramarine strikes for 9 damage, nearly killing the Ravager Flux Spray. The Flux Spray then fights back, and using his animalistic fury ploy, slays the Ultramarine with a devastating blow, scoring a victory point for Eliminate Guards. And the Ravagers also declare their Fellgor champion tack-up. The Flux Spray then charges the Assault Grenadier. The Intercessor Sergeant shoots the Gorehorn with his bolt rifle and uses a command point unsuccessfully, causing only 8 damage to the Gorehorn. The Intercessor Sergeant then charges the Gorehorn and strikes it with his power sword, causing it to frenzy. Seeing an opportunity, the Toxhorn moves and dashes forward, then uses his extra AP to seize the objective from the Ultramarines. With little choice, the Grenadier slashes the Fluxhorn, causing him to frenzy. The Ultramarine then fights again, and the Flux Spray, fighting defensively, manages to score a critical hit against the Grenadier before the Grenadier finally puts in the killing blow, defeating the Fellgor champion before he can score any victory points. The Mangler then charges the Ultramarine gunner, using his ambush ability to make his attack extra deadly. The combatants exchange savage blows, and the Marine gunner suffers 12 wounds before finally causing the Mangler to frenzy, ensuring its death at the end of this activation. An Assault Intercessor moves to a hatch and goes on guard. The Gnarlscar charges the Ultramarine Sergeant and uses his uncompromising attack ability to shoot and fight. Shooting with his auto pistol, the Gnarlscar inflicts 2 wounds. The Gnarlscar then strikes 2 critical hits with his bionic fist, causing 10 points of damage to the Ultramarine before the Ultramarine finally forces him to frenzy, causing the Gnarlscar to die at the end of its activation. The frenzied Gorehorn then slays the Sergeant with his Skull Cleaver before dropping onto the deck lifeless. The Vandal opens the hatch and is immediately attacked by the guarding Ultramarine, who uses a command point to improve the efficiency of his attacks. The Marine slashes for 9 damage before suffering 5 damage in return. The Ironhorn then strikes with his bludgeon inflicting 8 wounds upon the Ultramarine and nearly killing him before suffering 8 wounds himself. At the end of turning point 2, the Ultramarines score 2 more victory points for having secured 2 objectives, but the Ravagers score 4 victory points for having secured 4 objectives. In turning point 3, the Ravagers claim the initiative. The Ravagers continue to employ their violent temperament, and the Ultramarines again employ their assault doctrine. Neither team has any more tac-ops to reveal, and there are no guards for the Ravagers to nominate. The Ultramarines, however, nominate the Ravager Shaman as the guard they plan to eliminate. The Ravager Shaman charges the Intercession Gunner and simultaneously steals Objective 3 from the Ultramarines. An Assault Intercessor slashes the Iron Horn, causing it to immediately frenzy. The Marine then slashes again, landing a critical hit and splattering the Gallowdark's walls with the Iron Horn's blood. The Vandal then slays the Assault Intercessor with his Man Crusher, then moves to the objective. The Grenadier lobs a crack grenade at the Tox Horn, but causes no damage. He then charges the Tox Horn and reclaims the objective. The Tox Horn then fights back, suffering 5 wounds before killing the Grenadier, scoring a victory point for rout and reclaiming the objective. The Intercessor Gunner then falls back and claims an objective from the Ravagers, scoring a victory point for shock and awe. The Herd Goat then moves and dashes toward the central chamber. An Assault Intercessor then shoots the Ravager Shaman for 4 wounds. He then charges the Shaman and reclaims the objective. At the end of turning point 3, each team scores another 3 victory points for controlling 3 of the objectives. In turning point 4, the Ravagers again seize the initiative. The Ravagers employ ambush tactics, while the Ultramarines employ their assault doctrine. And the Ravagers declare the Assault Intercessor on Objective 3 as their eliminate guards target. The Herd Goat switches from conceal to engage, then charges the Intercessor Gunner to perform an ambush, and uses a command point to improve his chances. The Herd Goat then whips the Marine mercilessly, killing him. The last surviving Ultramarine fights desperately to defend his objective. The combatants trade blows, and the Shaman inflicts 6 wounds upon the Assault Intercessor before the Ultramarine drives the Shaman into a frenzy. The Assault Intercessor then fights again, and in his desperation, unsuccessfully uses a command point. And, after striking the frenzied Shaman only once, the Ultramarine is felled by the Shaman's staff, scoring the Ravagers 1 more point for eliminate guards. With nothing else left to do, the Ravager Vandal claims one final objective, and the battle comes to an end, with the Ravagers scoring 4 more victory points, and the Ultramarines scoring only 2. Well, as expected, the Fellgor Ravagers are quite strong. Even though the score was relatively close, the Intercession squad is a very tough kill team, and the ability of the Ravagers to essentially go 1-for-1 against assault intercessors was quite impressive. Part of this was due to some of the Ravagers' powerful ploys, not the least of which is ambush and animalistic fury. But the majority of their advantage definitely came from their built-in fury ability, which in most cases allowed them to fight, or even charge and fight, one final time before dying. And given how hard they hit, that final fight was likely to take a toll against the enemy every time. It will be interesting to see how the Fellgor Ravagers continue to perform in future battles, but for now, I'd predict they're going to do quite well. If you'd like to support my mission for the Great War, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for future Batreps. Until next time, I'm War Boss Bogo.